Welcome back to the Fast Life Podcast, which is brought to you by Simpson Motorcycle Helmets. Without a doubt, Simpson has been my go-to helmet since 2016. Their iconic and aggressive style has set them apart from other brands. Simpson offers many different styles of helmets to fit your taste and budget. Head on over to simpsonmotorcyclehelmets.com to check out all the different options they have for you, and give these guys a follow on Instagram at Simpson Motorcycle Helmets. On my way down from Northern California, I stopped in to see Gard from Arch Motorcycle. Now, Arch Motorcycle is both co-owned by Gard and Keanu Reeves, and I sat in there, got to see the whole facility, got to see all the bikes and how intricate these are, and also got to hear this awesome story of how it all started. So let's jump into these sponsors real quick, and then we're going to get right into this episode with Gard from Arch Motorcycle. Cowboy Harley Davidson is located in South Austin, and they are ready to help you get on the new bike you have been thinking about, or help you get your current bike dialed in with all the performance parts and upgrades you need. From service to sales and everything in between, check them out at cowboyharleyaustin.com and on Instagram at cowboyharleyaustin. They have new 2023 bikes rolling in daily, so give them a call or head in and let them know that the Fast Life sent you. Our longest running podcast supporter, Lexan Moto, and our Bluetooth headset of choice here at the Fast Life since 2019, is still here providing you with one of the best Bluetooth headsets on the market, the G16, which I personally use on my motorcycle rides to check out everything from my favorite playlists to my favorite podcast. The battery life and sound quality is amazing on these headsets. Earlier this year, Lexan dropped the Smart Tire Pump, which became an instant everyday carry for many people on motorcycle trips. Well, now they have refined and taken the pump to new levels with the Lexan Smart Tire Pump Gen 2, which now offers an internal cooling fan, is 20% smaller in design, and can double as a portable charger while you're away from civilization. Pair these great products with some of the best customer service in the industry, and head on over to lexan-moto.com and drop the Fast Life offer code to save yourself 15% off your order. And don't forget to give these guys a follow on Instagram at Lexan Moto. If you have seen any of my personal bikes in person or on the gram over the past 6 years, you will definitely notice my ongoing support for Lucky Dave's. Their seats have always fit my ass perfectly and had the style profile I prefer in the 2-up seat game. I have ran the San Diego bars on my FXR and Dynas for years. Now I currently run the Peacemaker bar and riser series on my 2020 Road Glide. These bars are dope, with many options to customize the appearance, as well as get you dialed at the right height and hand position. I would go as far to say that the Lucky Dave's riser bar is one of the most comfortable bars on the market, no matter what risers you put them in. Check out all the options for your ride at luckydaves.com and give these guys a follow to stay up on product releases and inventory restocks on the gram at Lucky Daves.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
Fast Life Podcast.
Yeah, actually, I had a lot of time to drive today, so I was able to go check out the one you did with Dean Del Rey.
Oh, shit. Okay. Yeah, Dean was a nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know he used to ride, and I know he had a bad accident, but, you know.
Yeah, he got fucked up pretty good.
Yeah, that's wild. Well, man, I'm going to try to keep this concise, okay. But, I mean, you have a lot to talk about. I mean, a lot. I mean, I there was stuff that I listened to that Dean Del Rey podcast that even added to my list of shit I wanted to kind of bring up. And going back to like your first time into the motorcycle stuff in the 80s, like,
oh yeah,
were you in the Pacific Northwest, up in Seattle or something like that?
Seattle area.
So what was that?
So I co-founded a company that mostly focused on protective gear for off-road motorcycles. Mm-hmm. So like we're the first guys to make aluminum disc brake guards and master cylinder guards and exhaust pipe guards. Mm-hmm. We had a motorcycle dealership, an off-road motorcycle delership. This was like early 80s, 81, 82. Mm-hmm.
How'd you get into that? Like, was there something that was going on in the 70s? You fell into that? Or?
You know, my first ride on a motorcycle was 8 years old. Uh-huh. And gonna pick my little boy Billy up here.
That's fine.
Hopefully he'll just be chilling.
Chilling.
And yeah, so I don't know. I fell in love. I saw this neighbor kid riding this mini bike, and got a chance to ride it, and I was just hooked. So I spent, pretty much every waking moment obsessed with motorcycles. Like in school, I'd be sitting in math class drawing pictures of motorcycles.
Oh, that's rad.
And so I sort of was a young, I'll use the word entrepreneur, but basically just, raised by a single mom and had to scrap and make my own money.
A little hustler. And
so I had lots of businesses when I was young. And then when I became a young adult, my first real business was a motorcycle business. And it became, the business is actually still in existence. The guy I started it with still owns it in Washington. And yeah, it just grew from there. After that experience, I kind of tried to get out of the motorcycle thing for a while. I'd raced, and by the time I was in my mid-20s or so, I was, thinking maybe I need to expand my possibilities, for life. And is there something else maybe I should be doing? Have I been too focused on two wheels?
That's a good thought. Like I never thought about that. Like if
it didn't work out.
You come on, if you come up through motorcycles, do you? I think we all go through that thing because I kind of had the same upbringing where you wonder if maybe there's a better opportunity for like the American dream in another world, if you will.
Yeah, I mean when you're so tunnel visioned on one thing, then sometimes I guess, you start to look outside of that a little bit and say, is there something else out there I should be doing,
Yeah.
So I spent a few years pursuing some other things, but ultimately got sucked back in and really have been fully focused on motorcycle industry, I guess, for the last 30 years or so. Damn. Almost, besides the break I took from early 80s, So,
what was the catalyst to bring you down to Southern California?
I met my wife, and she lived here, and she was like, "Well, we could live anywhere. Seattle's beautiful." She'd been there a few times to visit, and somehow every time she came, it was beautiful and sunny, nice. Which is like 6 days a year.
Yeah.
And I said, "No, listen, you won't survive here," And I was originally from Southern California, and so coming back was pretty easy for me.
Yeah.
I felt like I did my time up there.
And then you through that podcast, I'm just kind of running back through what I had remembered from it. So you came back into the industry, and then you started getting more back into the dealership program again. Was that part of that?
Yeah, originally I saw this. I met my wife. We got married. I sold everything. At the time, I'd owned a limousine business in the Seattle area.
So you did have a lot of
and I'd done a couple other things in between.
Yeah. And
I owned a home and had a young son that I was raising by myself, and sold everything and moved back to Los Angeles, and I kind of didn't have anything to do, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll see what's out there that I know. And I saw this ad in said, "Come to work for Southern California's hottest Harley business," or something like that. And I thought it was Bartell's Harley Davidson. And I called and went to interview for the job, and it was this little custom shop called Bad Bikes in Culver City. And I think I'd spend so much time sort of working for myself that when the guy tried to hire me, I basically said, "Well, I'll come to work for you, but I want to be a private contractor. I'll just bid the jobs for you, and you pay me when I'm done with the job." And quickly went from some wrenching to like fabricating stuff. He had a paint shop and
had everything.
And then
for over 50 years, the Ness family has provided us with top quality custom motorcycle parts. And today's product line is better than ever, offering you products to enhance your motorcycle's performance and the overall look of your bike. With 12 different categories of custom air cleaners, Arlen Ness has a filter that will fit your budget or your taste. I'm currently running the Method air cleaner on my 20 Road Glide, along with their one-of-a-kind Method No Flex front fork legs and bagger fork guards, which allow me to show off my Arlen Ness gold fork tubes. It's really sick. From custom handlebars and rims to bodywork and foot controls, head on over to arlenness.com to start getting the parts you need to enhance your motorcycle experience. And as an added bonus to Ness's well-stocked product line, you can use offer code in all caps, FASTLIFE10, to save yourself 10% on your purchases. And it's always free shipping on orders over $100. And lastly, give these guys a follow on the gram at Arlen Ness Motorcycles.
That lasted like not even a year. And as those things sometimes do, it was like disputes over getting paid and getting paid on time and this kind of stuff. And so finally I left, and then there were several customers there whose motorcycles I've been working on. They basically chased me down and said, "Who's going to finish my motorcycle?" Yeah. And the first one I finished in the customer's garage, and then another customer came, and I was like, "Listen, I got no place to work on it, on stuff." And he's like, "Well, how about we get a little shop someplace together?" And that was the beginning. The first shop, I think, was like here in California, was like in 97 or something.
What'd you call that?
Ziggy Harley. And there's a bit of a story there too. And of course, I was a little worried that the motor company might come after us. Not, silly, of course, because we were a tiny little shop. So it was, Harley was spelled with no E. It was Harly.
They probably thought it was a young girl or something like that.
Yeah, right. But it was really a play on Ziggy Marley. At the time, I had dreadlocks, and my friends nicknamed me Ziggy, and so it was just kind of a play on that at the time.
That's so. You said a while ago you were fabricating. How did that? I mean, that's a skill set that's kind of honed over years and whatnot. Did that just fall into your lap too, or was it kind of out of necessity to solve a problem? And you started going down that rabbit hole, or what?
I've always had this weird. I think if I would, and I hate to talk about having abilities because most of the time I feel like I have none. But if I've had two gifts, I think one was that I can look at things and figure them out, whether it's a thing or a person or a situation. And I had a mechanical aptitude. So everything has basically been self-taught, Yeah. So I taught myself how to weld. I taught myself how to shape metal. And at the time there was no YouTube or internet really. So it was, you sort of just had to figure it out. Maybe you could find a book. Yeah. You go to this place called the library.
Oh shit, they used to have
and
those?
They had these things called books.
Well, when I started, they had the Wolfgang books and all the how-to weld, how-to bodywork, and all that stuff too. Yeah, I had them all.
The problem for me was I had to, convince my wife to read them to me. But yeah, so I just, I don't know. I guess I would just look at things and go, well, I could do that and just do it, And the more you do it, first of all, if you have some aptitude for it, then that encourages you to keep going, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it was,
Well, also on top of this, like you mentioned, like when you were younger, you would always sketch bikes. Do you think that might have been the beginning stages of like having this the creativity and the design aspect of being able to I always tell people to be able to visualize it in your head. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can see it, and then you're starting to do the hand-eye coordination to create it on paper. And
yeah, I think translate. I was as a kid was kind of drawn to artistic things too. So I was already tinkering, working on stuff, very young, and I was good at taking shit apart and not that good at putting it back together. But I also drew stuff all the time, and I put models together, and so. As a kid, I was kind of into that stuff, and it just continued. I guess just sort of an outlet, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, with that being said, you're also coming back. You're doing these bikes. You're working on these for people, and it's like the chopper boom here was really stirring up around that time, late '90s, mid '90s, and you're in the melting pot.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how was it? How did you feel in that space, and did you kind of get roped up into it? And
yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways it was fortunate. In some ways it was sort of interesting and at times frustrating because, for a while I felt like there was more chopper shops than 7-Elevens,
Shit.
And the downside of that is everybody, there's so much competition that you're, in terms of, being able to make a living, you're competing with people with maybe less skills and that are going to just end up making customers unhappy, but they're setting sort of the price strategy. But then at the same time, it was kind of a hotbed, and I was fortunate at some point to get some attention. I don't think I got it. I probably started to get it more towards the tail end of the boom than the big boom, Like I was never one of the guys that, made hundreds of thousands of dollars selling T-shirts.
Yeah.
But that's okay, I think I was always focused on doing the work and, liking the work that I was doing.
Yeah, making that more like the legacy that you're kind of creating and stuff. And so, those bikes that you were working on the shop, were these more maintenance type projects, or were you actually doing some customizing and some,
Yeah, initially it was everything.
Real.
It was a service job. It was put some accessories on, and then somebody would be like, "Hey, can you stretch my gas tank?" And then somebody else would hear, "Oh, there's this dude that fabricates stuff over there," and then other shops were coming to me, and
Nice.
So I sort of got to know some people in the industry that way, doing work for them just as a gun for hire. And then at some point, that wasn't satisfying. I wanted to build my own stuff, and so really the decision when I did that was, when I started Chop Rods was, I'm gonna say no a lot, and I might not make some money, but I'm just gonna build the stuff I want to build, and if people dig it, that's good, and if they don't, then at the end of the day, I'll have a few bikes that I think are cool,
Yeah.
and then I'll do something else.
Yeah, there's something to it, right? When you build something for yourself, I think that we were talking about this on another podcast recently, where how much do you think the world influences your hand and your designs and your builds instead of how much you really are staying true to your vision? You know what I mean? And
yeah, well, we talked a little bit about, when you, at some point, the realization that you have a certain number of hours and days on this planet, and the work that you do should make you happy and fulfill you, right? It can't be all about money, and it can't be about just staying busy, and especially if you have sort of the spirit and heart of an artist, right? So I think it was just that, like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it for my satisfaction, not to fulfill other people's dreams,
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully you do that in the process with what you create.
Well, I think you start to curate as you're doing it, and you're honing your thing, the thing that you become known for. Then you start to attract the people that are attracted to that look.
Yeah,
which is, ultimately how art works in the modern day. You know what I mean?
Sometimes you attract 6 people out of millions, but hey, it's as long as you can be happy making 6 people happy, and that's good enough. Then that, for me, that was a motivation.
Yeah. So in the same time frame, we're talking late 90s, CNCs are becoming a thing. It's becoming a little bit more accessible to people. Like, were you dabbling in these other technologies as far as, you know what I mean?
Yeah, not that much. As a builder back then, I think I had a much more organic process.
Yeah.
I honestly seldom even did sketches. Sometimes you'd have to work something out mathematically, mechanically. But oftentimes I just built things from an idea and what I saw in my head, and then I just start, bending the metal, and whether it was a chassis or you're building sheet metal or whatever, and seeing it instead of having a print to make it to. It was sort of like a print in my head, and I was still trying to make that, be happy with making the part. But it was much more organic, and it really was, I think, like somewhere later in that process, when I was exposed to some 3D technology and this more repeatable processes and some work that was involving that, I started to become interested in that more than that other process, because it seemed a little more challenging,
Yeah. I mean, to jump forward a little bit, your bikes have so much integrated technologies into it. It sounds like something you would call just a random building on the side of the highway that does paperwork or something. Integrated technologies. But when you we were going over the bikes and the finishes and just to know what the chopper world was, or the custom bike era was, and what we see today, it's just so you have to have a mind that starts to wander into other places to get to that. In my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always saw things, interpreted things differently, and made a conscious effort to be careful about where my influences came from.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to start copying stuff. So I think I always really tried to find my inspiration from non-obvious, non-motorcycle places, and that maybe helped me.
Yeah.
Because it brought a different perspective to my work, I suppose, and maybe that's what made a few people think it was interesting.
Yeah. On that note, I mean, I've been hammering it down people's throats that are ears actually that I feel like we're all a product of all of our influences, right? As an artist as well, you love that work, and it just does something for you. But you can't just copy it. But then you love this, and after you get enough time, it starts to kind of mold this new thing through you. But when you also add in other elements outside the world, like you're saying, then you kind of have something that derived from more than just the motorcycle industry. And I mean, it's a gamble. I mean, you're rolling the dice on that, because that could be so off the wall that it just completely alienates yourself from the rest of the industry, or it's like there's enough tie-ins to kind of like throw them out a little bit and just keep them on a rope. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to follow the path that feels true and honest. And so if you follow the path that's driven by popularity, but it's not in your heart, you're not going to have success either, right? So you have to trust a little bit, your truth, if you will. And I think all human beings need encouragement. So if I would have never had anybody dig what I was doing, then maybe I would have stopped doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but also maybe I didn't need a lot of people digging it. I just needed a few people, and that was okay to keep me going, right?
Yeah. You also seem like, just in the walking around and talking, you seem to have a way different demeanor to you than most people that have come through the last 30 years of motorcycling. And I wonder if it's if it's something to do with other things in your life, maybe music influences or other types of hobbies outside of this, that kind of keeps you more grounded, if you will.
Well, I like to drink.
Oh, hell, dude. Bro. You think I got like this?
I mean, listen, it's probably a few things. I think that I've always been interested in a lot of things and not obvious things. And I think I try to look and find influences in non-obvious places, so outside of the industry. And that, it's not, there's nothing wrong with what happens in the industry. I just think, for me, I'm interested in being inspired by other things, the world, cultures, architecture, nature, whatever. And then also, I got a bit of age on me, and at some point that helps. And the more experience you have, the more you can filter and let the sediment, turn into what you are, and the more comfortable you become with it. Maybe that's part of it too. I don't know.
Maybe a little bit less impulsive, so you don't fall
Still
into
impulsive, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I just feel like sometimes people fall into the traps of just whatever's going on in the industry, whether it involves them or not. It's like, if it doesn't involve them, then maybe they're chasing for it as in a way of validation for them, and all kinds of weird different things like that.
Yeah.
You've been in the motor. You know how weird people are in this thing. So.
I mean, motivation comes from a lot of different places, right? I say this all the time, much to my wife's dismay, my motivation has never been monetary. And so there's a lot of trends that have happened in the industry that if I followed, I'd be a lot better off financially. But I think, you got to feed your soul with what makes you happy. And for me, it's always sort of a challenge and feeling like you accomplished something and not about money. I mean, a lot of times I've made stupid monetary decisions that have turned out to be really good for my soul, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point, because on that same note, I feel like what you've kind of done by doing that, not chasing something, maybe I think people didn't see the grind and the process and the evolution to get to where you're at now, or where you have been for the last 15 years or so. But I think ultimately they didn't see that. They all saw that more quick return of something, and they chased that, and now they're probably looking at, like, I hate to use this word, but maybe their mental health within this world of how, like, you get to build something with the respect of people that can afford you, right? And so you kind of have, in a sense, like, you have all the apples that people that truly want. Amazing motorcycles, not flooded with the market motorcycles that are truly unique and different, and and you have a calmness and a pace to it that seems manageable.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to stop kissing your ass a little bit later, so we'll get to that
listen,
point.
I mean, a lot of it, I think that's part of the key for me to success is to don't believe the bullshit and just stay focused on what you do and be willing to put the work in and be patient for it, right? And I knew that, I knew that there were a lot of challenges with starting a motorcycle company. I'm gonna let the.
It's probably just an accident. All this rain out here.
Listen, we're in Hawthorne. We're in the hood. I knew there were going to be a lot of challenges, and especially motorcycle people can be cynical and tough. Starting a business with somebody who's a very well-known person, but I knew him, and I knew his heart was true, and I knew how committed he was to it, and I just knew that we needed to just be patient, take the punches, don't fight back, just stay focused on what we're doing, and that eventually people would go, oh yeah, this is some real shit,
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. We didn't sell a T-shirt until a couple of years ago because not because we didn't have opportunities. We had opportunities to put Arch on everything.
Yeah.
And I just continually said no, which I find to be a very freeing word, because I thought we really needed to be a motorcycle company first, and then when we started to be able to do that a little bit, then maybe we could, and honestly the T-shirt thing was just that enough people were like, please, I want a T-shirt. It's not really a revenue stream for us. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, even before we get to that point of you and Keanu starting that project together that led into this whole thing that you got going on now, the crazy thing is listening to that podcast with Del Rey and seeing I know what an 05 dyno looks like the back of my hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And how it where it's at now, it's so what I'm thinking is, what were the bikes that you were building before that, on your own terms? How was your style? Where was it coming from then?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there were a handful of people, doing stuff in that style. I've heard people, sort of drop me in with Roland, which is, a compliment. I think Roland's done a lot of amazing things, and he's a very ambitious and creative guy. I really like him. But it was sort of a different style, and for me, I think it was, at the time, everybody was building long fork, high neck choppers, body work that's trying to hide everything. And I sort of went back to, I guess, my racing roots and wanted to have everything exposed, but just present it cleanly. So the idea of not hiding wiring, but laying it out and featuring it, or plumbing, or these kind of things, and sort of
exposing the meat and potatoes of the bike.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Don't hide what you cooked, but present it nicely on the plate or whatever.
Yeah.
And a sort of minimalistic style, and more of, I guess, sort of a bobberish, board tracky kind of style. But again, I tried to interpret things different. I built a bike that had a gas tank that looked like a little aluminum lunchbox, and looking for alternative finishes. I built something that had piston coat that would be on the inside of an engine as a finish, and powder coated finishes on body parts that wasn't really being done. So, shot peen and anodized, just anything I could find that seemed different and organic. And that motorcycle was not that different than those, but it was maybe a little more refined because they had a lot more machine pieces on it than, my previous stuff was mostly hand-built bits and pieces.
So he came into you for a sissy bar, or Keanu did, and over the course of how long would you say this process was building this bike?
That bike I built for him took 4 or 5 years, and part of that was that I had sort of involved him in the process, and he was enjoying it, and also when you're in that business, you kind of do work in compartments, right? So you'll have a project and you'll work on it until the funding runs out, or you're waiting for more funding, and so that's my little Billy making that noise. So it took that long, I think, because there was a lot of back and forth, and maybe waiting for him to be back in town so I could share what I was doing with him, but it was probably, combined all the work, it was still a couple years worth of work.
I have been saying it for years now. One of the first upgrades that pay off for the longevity of your motorcycle ownership is a ThunderMax EFI module. For those that don't know what that does for your riding experience, basically the T-Max module provides your Harley Davidson with proprietary auto-tune technology. It has a barometric sensor and a wideband O2 sensors, which constantly read the ambient air and air-fuel ratio to optimize the performance output from your fuel-injected engine. You can order these modules with pre-downloaded base map for your current stage of performance, or have the bike brought to a dyno tuner for a custom map. I can tell you from experience, I've watched my bike on the dyno learn from every dyno pull in real time. It works, and I have been running these modules on my bikes since 2015. The team at ThunderMax are some of the best in the business, and you can catch them supporting the big events like Sturgis, all the way down to things like our camp out. ThunderMax is in the streets with you. Head on over to thunder-max.com and get yourself dialed in with a T-Max tuner and drop the Fast Life offer code at checkout and save yourself 10% on your purchase. And follow my guys on the gram at ThunderMax EFI.
And also it was, I was dabbling in using some newer technology, using 3D modeling stuff and having parts machined and thinking about and finding people to do it. The tail section on that bike is one big giant piece of aluminum that I actually was connected through a guy that I knew from doing the motorcycle show Build or Bust.
Oh, you were on that show?
Yeah.
My buddy Adam Garley was on that show.
Was he?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was cool. They did it out there in somewhere out there in the hills, right?
Well, originally they did it out in the valley, and Russell Mitchell was
That's right, yeah.
like the main builder. And then towards the end of that season, they brought me in to do some stuff when Russell wasn't available, or along with Russell. They did an episode in Malibu at Bill Wall's place.
That's the one. That's where he was. Yes.
And then the second season, Russell and I kind of split them in half because neither one of us wanted to spend all the time there. It was pretty intense. So yeah, I might have met him. That might have been the first one I was on.
He actually, Adam actually, he won his
the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good dude.
The deal was finish the bike within 30 days and start it into a burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Where was I going with that?
Fuck. The dog thing happened, then this.
Yeah.
So, well, I think you were talking about the process of like building with him, and I had that on my list here. Something I wanted to ask you about is like how you've curated the custom experience, right?
Yeah.
Of making it to where I feel like customers have enough input to where they feel like an actual viable part of this process, but you know what I mean? Like keeping it at bay enough to where it doesn't turn it into a shit show. Yeah,
well, I mean, you have to use your experience to keep it from being a shit show, but I think, all of our customers are sophisticated enough that they understand that and they appreciate it, but they also like being, part of the creative process, and they have quite a bit of input. I usually, initially give them homework assignments where I have them send me imagery of things that sort of turn them on visually, and I'll preface it with, it doesn't have to be a motorcycle or a car, or it could be anything. So sometimes I'm getting pictures of guys, people surfing, or mountains, or meteorites, or who knows. And what's cool is you have to take that information and try to inform yourself about that person, and then come up with some designs that sort of satisfy that, right? And it's a cool process, and it's also a cool way to get to know the customer,
Yeah, I was wondering, because even though now you've got these more or less platforms with each model, so how much input do they get as far as, like, I mean, aesthetically things are pretty, the shape is there, right?
Yeah.
So it might be more of a fitment, like maybe the rider triangle fitment, or is that even?
Yeah. So there's the ergonomic part of it, which is pretty broad.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot of adjustability built into our motorcycles. I mean, there's some limitations that we've decided on, like a KR GT1 is a forward control bike. So there's a lot of adjustability in the forward control position, but we quit making them with mid controls. And the 1S is a mid control. We're not going to do forward controls, but there's still adjustability. Shapes of the seat, handlebar position, all those kind of things. And then aesthetically, they have a huge amount of involvement, but yes, it sort of stops at, we're not going to make a one-off gas tank or a one-off tail section or that kind of a thing. But you could do a lot with, paint schemes and finishes on parts and that kind of thing. Yeah,
that definitely is 100% what kind of separates things, aesthetically, how it looks, how it's presented and whatnot. But, so yes, back to the whole process with building that first bike. I mean, I'm listening to this podcast and I'm just envisioning it, like, man, where are you going with it? All these years, and to finally walk in and see it, I'm like, bro, like, I mean, that's not even anything close to what that dyno originally was. I think the only thing original I saw was the transmission case. Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, of course it's going to take years to build this kind of almost a prototype for what became the KTGR1. Is that
KRGT1?
Yeah. There, sorry. Yeah. But yeah, that's dude, that's pretty rad, man.
Yeah, and that wasn't the intention. It was really the intention was a one-off motorcycle, and every time Keanu made suggestions about building more, I was like, why don't I just finish this one and let's see, because you never know. It isn't like I've always said, it doesn't matter how many times you've built a motorcycle, as soon as you start to get cocky and thinking like, I know exactly what I'm going to do, you're setting yourself up for failure. You should have some doubt just to keep you in line and on track, right? And so I've always had that. And so even when you understand there's formulas and you follow those, and you have your own experience and you've done it successfully over and over and over again, you still should have some doubt. So I was basically, when they would come up, I felt like, let's just see if it works first. And and that's before we started to talk about what a horrible idea it would be to start a motorcycle company.
Well, it seems like his persistence, I mean, clearly it paid off, but, how was it, working with him and starting to understand his passion for motorcycles to where it made you feel comfortable going into business with another person? Have you always had like this ability to, how would I say it? Like you're not, how some people are like, I would never partner with somebody. Like it's all disasters. And I've always been in the middle. Like I feel like it's always about the relationship between the two individuals and the respect across the table.
Listen, the partnership is just, it's like a marriage, I've had fortunately I've only had one marriage, but I've had lots of bad relationships. Yeah. And I've had, a few good partnerships over the years and plenty of bad ones, Yeah. And, you got to take responsibility for your side of a bad relationship too, right?
Yeah, so, for sure.
And I think I had gotten to the point where I felt like in terms of business, it was better to do things on my own. But you know, I got to know Keanu, and I really put him through. I put him through the ringer when he came up with this idea, and you know, when looking back, I feel a little bit like I tortured him with all of my questions, but through the process, I really, you know, was confident in believing I knew who the guy was, and what his motivation and his commitment to it was, and then ultimately the opportunity, right? Because the thing that convinced me was, you know, after I tortured him with the laundry list of, you know, reasons why it was a horrible idea, and then said, well, okay, what's the single reason? If there was just one reason you could convince me to do this, and he said, we're gonna die, and I got what he meant was it was an opportunity to do something that we both cared about, that maybe meant something someday, you know.
Yeah, like some sort of legacy. So many people, and I guess there's, in the way you put it, can sound kind of, I guess to my generation or a younger generation, it can seem a little pretentious or whatnot. But I feel like it's something that's, you know, I think that maybe that's something that people have lost over the years. Like, you know, what am I doing that's going to be here for my family, for my name? And I don't think it's a bad thing to think about that, you know.
You know, I think it depends on on what the intention is behind it, right? So if you think a legacy just happens overnight, that's pretty damn pretentious.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you take for granted that a legacy is something that's even a guarantee, that's pretentious, right? But if it's a goal and you realize that it could take a very long time and a lot of work, then you know, it's true and pure, I think, you know, and there's no guarantee. Even, you know, we're over 10 years old, and that's nothing. So I know there's a long road ahead to get it to where it might have that chance. And if I live long enough and we do enough work, and you know, maybe we have a chance, but there's still no guarantee. Who knows? Sure. I can't control anything that happens when I'm gone, right?
Just gotta hope they don't steer it in the wrong direction.
Well, you do,
or they take it in their direction. It's their interpretation of what you started, right?
Yeah, I think you build the foundation, and then when you turn it over, you gotta trust, you know, that you've built a good foundation, and that whoever's like building the rest of the house is got a little bit of you in mind. They believe in it, and they're going to respect it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, you guys started this project in 2007? Is that when it started?
I started that bike build for him in 2007. Arch was established at the end of 2011, but really just the formation of the business. You know, then the next year was spent building infrastructure, and then the next 2 or 3 years was spent engineering the first production motorcycle. So,
did you have any idea what was involved in making a motorcycle company like this? Because I mean, I understand the bike builder, I understand that all that aspect of that world, but when you start a business together, like, how do you know to go down these pipelines of, you know, concept to production to reality to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of experience, so I knew I had enough experience to know it was a horrible idea and that it was going to be a tremendous amount of work, and that the commitment to starting a company that you hope someday, you know, continues on without you means a lifetime's worth of work. So I knew how serious the commitment was. But of course, I've learned a tremendous amount along the way. I think as soon as you know everything, you're fucked, right? Or think you know everything.
Yeah. Either way, you're still fucked. I
continue to learn. I think, you know, it's interesting. Another interesting thing with getting older is I think your appetite to learn becomes stronger, and your ability to learn maybe becomes weaker.
Yeah.
But it's like the appetite is a lot, you know.
That's what they always say about perspective when you're younger. If you could just have some of that older wisdom at a younger age, then you would use some of these more able by, you know, whether it's a physical ability or a mental capacity, because you're not full of, you know, years of bullshit that you can't clean off the hard drive. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they say youth is wasted on the young, right?
Yeah, that's right. But, you know, I was just thinking, like, you know, you were talking about you spent a couple of years, like, creating infrastructure, you know, like, you had the bike and at least you had a model to kind of build from to go in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to, quickly in my head, just wrap my head around like, I come in here, hey man, let's start this business together. This is a bike I built, and how do we just start reverse engineering this to the point where we feel what's like feasible as far as like, parts, and where do we set a price? And it's just like,
it's a lot of shit.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of shit every day. And it was definitely, it's very different than, owning a custom shop where you build a few one-off customs a year and they're organic and you can work all by yourself if you want, or you can have some helpers, or, so yeah, I knew what it meant, and was fortunately I had some experience with some, small production motorcycle companies that I did some consulting work and some design work for. So
there it is.
I had, my eyes were pretty open.
Okay.
But again, you have to not be afraid of a lot of hard work. You have to have a really good work ethic. You have to be willing to, to struggle and learn. And I think, and the number one thing is just be too dumb to know when to quit.
Yeah. That's you see those little memes on like social media or Facebook or whatever, where it's like the guy that's pulling the carrot and or the diamonds are behind the rock and he quits when he walks away, and stupid stuff like that. But so in this process, in this couple of year process, with him and his work, how was that, like, how was decision making going between growing this business when he's, in character around the world doing what he does?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's not involved in the day-to-day operations of the business. He has a day job that's pretty demanding, but he loves the business. Super committed to it. I think, I wouldn't speak for him, but I know that it's something that's a huge passion in his life, in addition to his other job.
It shows.
And so he's involved as much as he can be, and I want him involved as much as he can be. But, when he's not here, the day-to-day operations go on. He's not having to make day-to-day decisions.
That's good, yeah. He has faith in the structure that's been put in place, sorry.
Fortunately or unfortunately for him, yes.
Yeah. So what year was the first drop? You know what I mean?
2015, I think, was the first production motorcycle, yeah.
So 4 years in.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Considering. How many do you think you did that first year?
Oh, 6 or 8 maybe.
Nice.
And, probably 3 or 4 of those were for us, for testing, Yeah.
So what was the testing process like? Were y'all just heading out to Buttonwillow and
Ride
stuff?
the shit out of them. Santa Monica Mountains mostly, to be honest.
For real?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, most of the proving has been on real roads,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not bad. So about the bikes a little bit, man, like the length, they have that kind of stretched but long and low slung kind of vibe. Was there any particular reason like you went with that direction, or that kind of that setup? You know what I mean?
It was, the Care GT1 was, the benchmark was that prototype. So it was really trying to, whenever you build anything, if you're going to build it again, I think if you're halfway smart, you're going to say the reason to do it again is because what would I do better? What would I do different? Right.
Yeah.
So obviously we approached, how could we make the bike even better? And it was the only reason why, I agreed to do it at all was because it was an interesting motorcycle to ride, and having been a lifelong motorcycle rider, and, Keanu having a tremendous amount of motorcycle riding experience, we both agreed it was a unique riding experience. And so the goal was to create an American motorcycle that, delivered a unique riding experience. So we just sort of were methodical about what are all the things we would change, and how do we change them, and what do we have to start with,
Yeah.
And then you got to get it to a point where you have something to test, and then you make tweaks, and,
Yeah, that makes sense. Looking at it now, it's like I would see how as you start to go into some predictable production, starting to figure out how to make the molds to make some of these pieces out of carbon and go in that direction instead of everything being some handmade stuff, how was it going through and you were showing me the carbon tank on that one bike, and it's just so intricate, and I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking about all the carbon parts we got in our industry right now. I'm like, this shit is like, yeah, this is International Space Station stuff right here, man.
It's interesting and fun and sometimes painful. Some parts are purely aesthetic, but the pain point is that, we had, an example is our first KR-GT1 front fender probably had 18 different iterations in 3D and sketches before slight changes in 3D before we got a version that was like, okay, let's actually make that.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you have it, you're like, shit, if I was going to make that again, what would I do different? So you kind of have to have that kind of dissatisfaction with everything, that you always are looking at everything like, okay, it's done, but how would I make it better if I could do it
That seems
again?
like it would be very counterproductive for the process of building motorcycles in a production line.
Yeah, I think it's part of the beauty for us was, we set the company up with the intent that we would make as many things as we could ourselves so that we could do that. If we wanted to make 3 of them in the beginning and change them, we could do that,
kind of like soft updates.
Just small iterations, and some of them might be because we think it looks better. Some might be because it needs to be changed from an engineering standpoint. Some might be because it works better, and some might just be because we think that it makes the part better, even though nobody sees it, right?
Well, that makes sense, because that's exactly what would probably separate this brand from, a Harley, because you're making a custom motorcycle that's got customability within you, and you're not stuck on something that you got to run through, EPA each time and things like that.
Well, we still have to do all that stuff, but look, Harley has a massive amount of experience, and resources, which is to their advantage, but they also have, a system, and they're a machine, right? So any company that becomes that size, it has a legal department, a marketing department, an engineering department, a design department, all these different departments, and then shareholders, and there's a lot of things that shape their final decision. And at the moment, we have all that, kind of in one person, right? So there's a lot of people doing things, but one person gets to make the final decision.
Yeah. So that brings me to a great question. If you think about the way some car manufacturers are, how one guy leaves this company and goes to this company, and all of a sudden now these cars have a flavor of the last company.
Sure.
It's like, you've seen it happen so much over the last couple of years. And so when you think about like you as a designer on these bikes and the team that you've curated to kind of help with that process, it lends itself to, you're a young enough company where you have that versus, we don't have the original Harley guys running around. And of course it's been a good, I guess, legacy, how they've kind of brought it up.
Yeah. They built a good foundation for sure.
Yeah. And so, I just wonder, what's it, I guess I'm trying to formulate my question by just talking right now, but
I can appreciate that.
There's something in there that I see what I'm going at, but I just haven't figured out the damn words for it yet. But I'm just thinking about designing something, and then almost like say Lamborghini, and then you get those first couple of Lamborghinis that come out, and when does it become the next iteration of the next leader at the helm, or whatever, however you would look at that, so
well, I feel fortunate that we've been able to, in our short amount of time, have some resources sort of to back me up, if you will. Ultimately I have the responsibility and also the pleasure to make those final decisions, and to make sure, I guess, be the curator or the docent of the design.
That's my question. How is it, as a creative person, to allow other ideas to come into your art?
It's fabulous.
It is.
For me, it's fabulous. The trick is you have to, everybody's different, right? Like I know design directors in most automotive companies are pretty brutal, ruthless people, and they have a massive amount of resources that they can chew up and spit out. I think I tend to be a little kinder, gentler, which maybe isn't always as productive. They're probably that way because it's probably part of the way the beast has to be fashioned. So I tend to be a little more soft-handed and kind, but I know what I like. But I love the collaborative process. I love having other creative people involved making suggestions, and as long as they're okay with hearing, no, change this, no, we're going to do it this way. Which most designers that are not running a company, they have to be equipped that way. That's their job, right? So again, I feel very fortunate that our own designers and some other designers that we've sort of hired from outside resources over the last number of years have been great to work with, and have studied and tried to understand the brand to the extent that there's something to study and understand, and offer ideas that are true to the brand, that are good ideas, that just help.
I mean, it'd be badass to be like, just as a homework project, just to sit here and take like the original and say, okay, take that and morph that into part 2 or Mark 2 or whatever, and just be at home and just like start working and then looking for inspiration. You see it, man, like that process is for me in the little bit of design that I get to do in my life, that's probably one of the most rewarding feelings, when you finally get happy with it in pencil. And then, the process of actually bringing it into something you're holding is, which in my case, it's in paint. But it's still, it's a very rewarding, thing that kind of, it's an emotional roller coaster though.
You made something. But there is a lot of emotion and a process along the way. But I think that's that ultimately that affects the outcome. Without it,
Now I gotta ask this too, man, because I'm a video game guy when I'm not working, and having these bikes go through, like the Cyberpunk, the Matrix, and the Super Bowl commercial, and these things. Like, what's that been like, just to kind of be?
It's a trip. Yeah, it's a trip. And we've we've been very sort of thoughtful about it. One of our motorcycles has been in one movie, and that was The Matrix 4, and there were lots of other offers and opportunities, but we just felt like, especially for a movie that was a Keanu movie, we thought it'd just be kind of gratuitous to have an arch in there, right? But it was the right situation, and the director, Lana Wachowski, was really into the idea and really kind of pushed it. So that was cool, and it wasn't overdone. There were other motorcycles, and it was just in a couple little scenes, and it was cool to see it do a wheelie. And the Super Bowl thing, I sort of looked at that as it was really a Keanu thing, but it was cool to have the motorcycles in there, and I think it was a motivator for him. He's very true to everything he does, is something I really respect about him. He's done very few commercials, and he's never done a commercial for anything that he doesn't use or endorse. And we actually were using Squarespace as our website platform when they approached him with this idea. So he was like, okay, I could see where I could get behind it. I thought it was a cool, fun ad campaign. They always kind of make it a little bit funny and
put some humor in it.
So it was cool, and to see an arch in it, and during the Super Bowl was a trip too, kind of surreal,
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I mean, just like I said, seeing anything that knowing where that came from, in the head to the onto the concrete, it's got to be a exhilarating experience just to see that. We try every year. We missed a few years during the pandemic, but we try every year to do what we call an owner's event.
And so we'll find some cool little hotel someplace that we can, hopefully it has, you know, a small enough number of rooms that we can buy the whole place out, and the owners all get together, and they fund this. So, you know, we don't make money from it, but the owners fund it. And so we'll get together for 3 days. We'll have a couple of really amazing rides that we've scouted and curated, and we'll have meals together and food together. And you're in one place and there's 25 or 30 Arch motorcycles. And I think that's probably, those moments are where it's more of a reality to me than the rest of the time. I think I kind of separate it a little bit and don't try to think about it too much. I'm always focused on the challenges and maybe not appreciating as much as I should.
I can see how that could be kind of a toxic thing, to go lean too much into that admiration or that. So keeping grounded and humble, and, you know, remembering the premise of this whole brand is to the motorcycle riding experience.
Yeah, and it's not really about me. I mean, it's easy, you know, like, look, we all have some degree of ego, right? Yeah. You got to have at least some enough to, you know, that's healthy. But it's the idea was for it to be its own motorcycle company. I hear it get called a lot, the Keanu Reeves motorcycle company and stuff, and it makes sense because he's very well known and he can bring us, you know, attention. Yeah. But it's its own brand, you know. Yeah. And that's the goal, and eventually we'll get there, you know.
Oh, I think you're doing it, man. And I love that, you know, when you had said the whole Arch name, that was a very unique take on it that, you know, I found to be very interesting. And, you know, for the people listening, I think you should probably run that back through again. Okay. You know what I mean?
So, yeah, we get asked that, where'd the name come from? You know, whenever you start any enterprise like this, you know, I guess you could just name it after yourself or whatever. And Keanu and I sort of joked with each other about that. You know, like, he was like, let's call it the Hollinger. And I said, no way, let's call it the Reeves. No. And so we were playing the name game, and we'd probably gone through hundreds of names, and, you know, there was a short list of ones that sort of made it through, like, well, we could consider those. And we were really getting to the point where we had to pick a name. Mm-hmm. And both of us, I think, tended to lean towards names that maybe had an Italian flair or a you know, some other language, romantic language flair to it. But we're an American motorcycle company, and so we really hadn't settled on, you know, there were some obvious ones, but we would get together, you know, every other week or something, and, you know, talk about how we were going to form the company and do the name game, and it usually involved some food and, you know, maybe some beverages until late at night. And so at one of these meetings, when we were getting close and having to pick a name, we had met, and about 45 minutes into sort of just, you know, imbibing and having something to eat, Keanu had said, you know, I had one other name that I was thinking, and I said, okay, what is that? And I'd always said, the name, there should be a story behind the name. The name should tell a story. Yeah. And so he said, Arch motorcycle. And I said, okay, well, that doesn't suck, but why? And he started to talk about what an arch is and how it's this structure that, you know, provides strength and connection and passage, and this idea that, you know, the connection could be our partnership. It could be the relationship between our motorcycle and our customer. It could be the relationship between the customer and the riding experience, you know, all these different ideas with connection. Yeah. And then passage. And then this space that lives underneath an arch, which could be a space for creativity. And I just saw, not only is it a cool, nice, compact name, but that's a cool idea. And I instantly said, yeah, that's the name. Yeah. And he wasn't sure. He was like, really? You sure?
Yeah, I mean, like, once that was explained, and I like what you said about, like, it needs to mean something. You know what I mean? Because I'm big into photography, and I watched a whole documentary on Kodak. Yeah. And it's a made up word that means nothing, that just now is synonymous to the film. Really? You know, so it's and it was thought of in the 1800s, you know what I mean? They were marketing back then as well.
They just made up the name.
Yeah, Kodak has nothing to do with anything.
It's not someone's name or anything.
Because George Eastman is the founder for Kodak.
Yeah,
so
right.
it's like a strange little deal, but it was it's crazy going down that rabbit hole because of how much he was like the Elon Musk of that era.
Huh.
So rich because of film, and as it came into as they developed a film that motion pictures started to use and things like that, and was used primarily all the way up until digital.
And crazy how it went away.
Yeah, it's coming back big time right now.
Yeah, digital.
Big time with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
You know what
right.
I mean?
But Kodak as a brand,
Yeah,
went away. Huh?
no, they went away, but they're back. I mean,
Yeah,
they stayed.
awesome.
They stayed making film stocks, and so they still make a lot of it. And
Just their stock went to shit, I guess.
yeah, they definitely went from way up there as a
Yeah.
massive company to almost non-existent. And I think it was the, for lack of a better term, the hipster movement, where they all had to go back and do vintage stuff. But as someone that shoots a lot of digital, I found a crazy connection to photography through shooting film again. And it's kind of hard to explain, but it lends itself to being more in the moment and taking the shot, and less like click, look, click, look, click. You know what I mean? Because
I think you have to invest something in understanding how to use it
Exactly.
too, right? Where
Yeah.
we all have a phone, we can take a picture, and then there's all these apps afterwards to make it look really cool. Or even when you take the pictures, like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to look like that.
Yeah.
To shoot film, you have to have some education to understand what you're doing, and then you have to wait and see if what you did worked, right?
Exactly. And so there's a lot of missed shots when it happens, but there's also this weird visceral thing that I'm starting to notice, because in digital I'm constantly looking for the cleanest and sharpest thing, and then this film is just naturally a grainy thing. Even as a new print, it's grainy, and it just doesn't make sense why I'm so attracted to it. But if I make my digital photo look like it, I almost am like, yuck, this is, you know what I mean? It's like it's not supposed to.
No, I get it.
It's a different thing. And but yeah, that's been a huge outlet for me creatively. And as I've gotten, as I was speaking to you earlier about paint, as I got further and further, it was less about hanging out in the garage with my buddies and painting the bikes so we can go to bike night next week. It got to a point where paint was a very expensive thing to have for me in my world. And so photography, like catching somebody looking cool as shit, riding down the highway, or their bike, or them, and giving them that photo, whether it be an airdrop through your phone, or a literal print that you had done for them for Christmas, or a birthday. It just, maybe it's more selfish. It made me feel good about being able to give my friends something that I think is cool.
Yeah, I have a huge respect for talented photographers in photography. I think it's an interesting medium, and that idea of capturing that moment that's gone then. Right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely deciding to go full into photography, in this day and age, especially after the pandemic, is not necessarily something you're kind of throwing darts at the wall if it'll ever be something that's financially viable.
Oh yeah,
but it's definitely helped.
I think that's tougher than being a custom bike builder.
Oh yeah,
trying to make a living with photography.
It's definitely tough, because there's just so many more people in the pool, and you're creating art. So, and I think I understand the process of developing my own flavor.
Yeah,
and so I'm currently in this position of like understanding the time involved to create it, and to stay inspired by other people that I find that do something badass, or something that looks interesting to learn, and just let nature do its thing. But I'm not quitting, basically.
Yeah,
because that's what happens. I feel like so many people do that, whether they're musicians or photographers or artists or writers, and all these things that they're not. It's not going to happen when you want it to. It's going to happen when it happens.
Yeah, I think art is to be an artist is I think it's like, it can't be something you want to do. It has to be the spirit and soul of an artist is you can't not do it, right?
Yeah.
And so with that, you can't expect some instant return. You have to just do it because it's soul fulfilling,
Yeah, it's almost like it knows your intentions, and until your intentions change to something more along the lines of enjoying the process of creativity, it's like art won't allow you to You know, it's like, nah, dude, you don't get to do that here. I mean, people slip through the cracks, but you know,
Oh, sure.
you know, but yeah, it's a weird place, man. And I think that, you know, I hate saying today's instant gratification, because I honestly don't really believe that. I think it's just we just have access to things now. It's not like some kind of weird
It's conditioning for sure.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
If you've grown up having everything immediate, why would you expect anything different?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, they know no better. I feel fortunate to have spent my childhood and, you know, born in '82. So I got to experience life when you had to, you know, go knock on your friend's door to see if you can go play.
Yeah.
And, you know,
we were just having some video games barely.
yeah, they were super crude, you know what I mean? But, and now I got, you know, and then I get to live in this world of, I think for social media, it really helped with my life or my generation, because some of us took an interest a little bit in computers in the 90s. And so we were a little bit computer literate. Mm-hmm. And then as social media kind of took over, it was an easy transition for some of us because of video games and just being on screens.
Now we're all walking around with a computer, a video game, a camera, a recorder, everything in one, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
it's not a telephone anymore.
It's definitely not. It's the least thing it does, right? But as crazy as it is, there's parts of that I hate. You know?
Yeah. I'm
there's
with
also, you know, honestly, there's probably more things that I hate about love, but you know, I would say that like the last 10 years,
it's here to stay though.
It's not going anywhere.
I mean,
yeah. But you just, I mean, if you look at it on the bright side, it's just like you get exposed to amazing things easier.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like I think about all the badass places I've gotten to ride in America that I only found because of Instagram. Yeah, because I hadn't picked up a National Geographic.
Yeah,
since
right.
the
How
90s.
else would you know? You maybe see a picture somewhere.
How do you find that unless you're in the
Butler Maps thing or something?
So there's like a lot that has come, but it's also made it to where, you know, I rode to like Key West a couple months back, and you know, you go to take a picture at the southernmost buoy, right? And then you see I'm standing across the street, catty corner. And then you look to the left, and there's a line 3 blocks.
Taking the same picture.
And it's just kind of a...
Or, listen, like I commute on a motorcycle every day that I can. Like it's raining today, which is rare here in LA. But, and I constantly see people cannot stay off their phones.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking about, I'm behind the wheel of a 3,000-pound killing machine.
Yeah.
They just gotta look at that phone, you know.
Yeah, they feel like they're in their car. They're not going that fast. What's it gonna hurt? Let me just see what they said real quick.
Just tell before you get to them. They're on their phone.
Yeah, it's fucking wild. So, you know, as this thing's kind of growing and evolving, you know, I think I overheard you say a couple of times that, you know, you wanted to push. You're at 3 models now.
Yeah, well, our third model, the Method 143, is sort of in the final stages of development and industrialization, and hopefully we'll build one before the end of this year, and then start to be able to build production units and deliver them next year.
That's the one with the wheels that we looked at.
Yeah,
right?
So we designed the wheels are sort of like a turbine fan thing, and it's a carbon monocell chassis and carbon swing arm, and it has this monstrous S&S 143 cubic inch engine at the heart of it, and it's a unique design motorcycle. The idea was, you know, motorcycle manufacturers for years and years and years and car manufacturers too have built concept vehicles, and they'll use those maybe to show their design ethos or what they can do. And in the past, those motorcycles would maybe get shown at some auto show or motorcycle show, and then either get squirreled away or destroyed. And so for us, it was the idea to try to do that, but actually make a limited number of them and offer them to the world, you know?
Yeah, a truly one unique bike, and I think I heard the price tag on it. It's pretty gnarly.
It's kooky. I mean, I never thought I'd be actually selling $250,000 motorcycles, but
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're all striving to be there. Trust me. I'll do a $100,000 paint job on a Road Glide.
Yeah, right.
They'll let me. So, but you know, with that being said, it's just like that bike is truly, you know, I could sit there and go through a 12-pack just looking at everything in there.
Yeah.
You know, all the design elements that I'm just assuming maybe this is from this era. Maybe I love the front end. I love the girth on the forks give it
airfoil look.
Yeah, and you know, whether it's something that you're doing for aerodynamics or just leaning into the proportions, you know, that's another thing that I find very attractive on a really nice motorcycle is like a sense of direction and motion and proportion, you know. So
yeah, I think obviously that's what we strive for in all of our motorcycles, and also, you know, to try to create something that is constantly allowing you to discover something new. Yeah. And you know, it's fun and challenging and fulfilling when you pull it off a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you guys definitely have, man. It's inspiring, man. Like coming in here and just seeing this, and then, you know, like I said, Jordan, got to thank Jordan for linking us together. Yes. Hot Bike Jordan, I'm pretty proud of him getting that thing back off the ground and whatnot. But I did ask him to reach out to you in January. Okay. And here it is. We're linking up.
Well, he's been busy. You know, he's been with us for a few years, and then, you know, sort of simultaneously trying to get the hot bike thing going. And I know it's his passion, and I was super supportive of the idea. And as much as I hated to lose him, I also am super happy for him to be pursuing that, you know.
He flew out to Dallas and
he told me that to do your podcast.
Yeah, we were just trying to do whatever we could to help get that Kickstarter going.
Yeah.
And
well, it turned out okay, even though he didn't meet the goal of, you know, that campaign. He got a lot of commitment and enough to make him feel confident about making the leap, which is cool.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I think maybe it's just because I'm old or whatever you want to you consider it. It's just that feeling of holding a magazine, and you know, feeling the texture of the paper and seeing the photography and the write-ups. It's something I truly love, and I love it when you feel like the people that made it are proud of it. You know what I'm saying? And I know you've seen magazines, like especially the overseas ones that make their way over here, and you're like, wow, like this is still on and popping in different parts of the world, but here it's like this. It feels like a
digital thing again, you know.
Yeah, here it feels like you remember when pop-ups were a thing on the internet? Like everywhere you go, it's just bah, bah, bah. Everybody over inundates like advertisement into their magazines to, you know, I guess the corporate dollar kind of model, and it just takes away the feeling of reading it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, thank God there's still some romantics left in the world, right?
Yeah. I feel it's a small island.
You're becoming dinosaurs.
Exactly. We're starting to sound crazy to certain generations and stuff like that. So it's and you guys say, you just start saying in my day or when I was a kid.
Yeah, you sound like that old cartoon. Back in my day.
Exactly. So, is there any kind of, you know, last question or two, is there anything else like that, you know, you think that, you know, as you kind of focus on getting this method out and doing this, is there any other kind of like pushes, like a 2023 push? I know that you had talked about kind of like a lot of people are pushing towards EV, but where do you kind of not stand on that, but like where do you think that it's going to take like your motorcycle company?
That's a whole nother podcast, Chase. I mean, seriously, I have like endless ideas and opinions, you know, on that. I think the best explanation I've heard in conversations I've had with people in that industry is that it's a social movement at the moment.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I find that to be very true. You know, do we need to protect the planet and the environment? Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Is electric the answer? That's another podcast. That would be an interesting. If you put a panel of people together for that one, I'll join you on that one.
I'm an idiot in that, so I'm literally just gonna hit record and do go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much, but I'm logical and I'm cynical and I'm inquisitive. So
yeah,
you know, I see some illogic ideas behind it. Mm-hmm. I understand the motivation and you know, I think I'm conscious of the planet even when it comes to, you know, trash. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I can tell you this, that I don't feel like it's something that we have the bandwidth, the resources, or the expertise to sort of be leaders in. I think that we need to continue to be attentive to what's happening and try to understand it more. And if there's an opportunity that makes sense, that, you know, we'll look at it. And we've done some of that already. Yeah. In terms of our own sort of evolution, we're sort of working on our own future platform, which is a dinosaur, a fossil fuel burning based platform. Yeah. But it's an entirely new platform for us that hopefully will see the world in 2025. Yeah. That's the goal anyway. And part of the challenge is to make sure that it's still an arch, right? That when you look at it, you still go, oh yeah, that's an arch.
Do you think that like taking, I guess for, you know, piggybacking off what you just said, maybe the arch approach to different types of bikes that exist, like different types of, not bikes, like, you know, more like styles of bikes. Yeah. You know? Like
a adventure bike or, you know, a naked bike, this or that. Yeah.
I had to ask for all my world. Is there any kind of dresser concepts coming around?
You know, there's not an immediate plan, but there's definitely a goal to try to make it, you know, make something, one model that's maybe a little more passenger friendly, and also maybe some way to take some stuff with you, whether it's you know, it probably won't be a full on bag or dresser kind of thing. Yeah. I really believe that everything should be done with full intention. And so making a motorcycle that's designed to be an unique riding experience and then just slapping a pillion pad and some passenger pegs on it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It's got to be an experience for both, right?
It should be designed to do that, which I think, you know, the best motorcycles that do that out there, that's what they're designed for, right?
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
So I think it's interesting what's happening in that whole movement and the whole racing situation, and it's brought, you know, a whole new sort of audience to it, which I think is cool.
I mean, could you have seen that coming in 2015? Like the whole industry seeming to go this direction of, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, you know, my crystal ball is shit, so I couldn't say that I could, but it doesn't surprise me, honestly. I mean, I think we saw this movement happening for a while, you know, like, you know, I knew Satya before he was in the motorcycle industry. I actually knew Satya also from Build or Bust. He was on Build or Bust. And he asked me once, you know, like, hey, what advice would you give to somebody, you know, that was getting in the motorcycle business? I would say run the other direction. But you know, he's built a whole business for himself based on this whole idea of performance Harley Davidsons, right? Or I guess suppose it's Harley and Indians, but American, you know, cruisers, which, you know, we're sort of in that genre too, right? Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that it got to the point where guys are racing them and the factories are involved. And there certainly was, I mean, by looking at the attendance, there was already an interest in it, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I've always said that, you know, when the bagger thing started to kind of pop off, you know, the middle of the country and whatnot, that's bagger central because of the type of riding we have, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so this was an easy transition for everybody, you know, like, oh, hell yeah. Yeah. You know,
and it's kind of an American thing too, right?
Put like, it is.
Detroit, like a hot rod, right? Let's go race a hot rod.
It's like Detroit and Milwaukee just kind of went on a date. Yeah. And this is the love child of it, right?
Well, it's like the motorcycle version of NASCAR a little bit, maybe, you know?
Come on, dude.
Well,
let's put a little redneck in there, too. Yeah, I mean, we did have a phase of mullets going around for a while, too.
It's all good.
Call them NASCAR bikes.
Yeah, really, I mean, you wouldn't instinctually think, well, let's go race a bagger around a course that you typically see sports cars and sport bikes going around. So, and it's impressive when you see the lap times are not that far off of the top guys in the superbike class too.
So when, you know, Saddlemen had they I forget the guy's name, but he's around here somewhere that built that Saddlemen bike for the first
Wooly.
Yeah, dude, that thing was, I mean, there's a lot of your flavor in the seed and the...
Oh, Wooly's amazing. Yeah. I mean, he's, you know, he does
Wooly Speed Shop or something like that.
He has his whole own vibe, and he's a good dude.
Yeah. So I just noticed that. I was like, that bike was probably the first one where we saw that and like, yeah, that's another level of like commitment into creating something that can do something that these bikes were not designed to do.
Yeah.
And then even seeing like the Harleys in in Mama Tried, I went one year and they had the Wyman bike on display, and just seeing the swing arm and how they did it, and how they built like a billet outer primary that held the mid controls, and and it was just like, man, like this is the shit we've been wanting and seeing.
Yeah. And
as like the smaller manufacturer or the smaller parts guys are coming in and starting to see this and figure out ways they can, it's inspiring ideas, because I feel like a lot of our industry, as far as like the Harley V-twin industry and Indian as well, it's kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast. Like, a lot of people are looking within so much for the ideas, and then you see what Harley comes out with, and it's like, nobody thought about that. Nobody thought about doing it that way.
Yeah.
It's all this bolt on this, instead of like, okay, well, we can probably make a better product if we just think a little bit further in the box, or out of the box, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look, it seems like a no-brainer once they got involved, because they have all the core technology for that motorcycle and all the resources to take it to the next step, right? So if the only thing they maybe were missing was the desire, and now they have that. So it's cool to see those motorcycles that, both they and Indian and other people. I mean, Saddleman has a whole team now that I think they're getting some help from Harley, but they're super focused on that. And sometimes it's a bummer for guys like us who use Saddleman when we can't get them to work on our stuff, but I get it, right? They're gone racing, and they're focused on that. So it's cool to see. I mean, anything I think that brings eyeballs and revenue to the industry, I think is great.
Yeah, did you hear that they're doing another movie, or they're doing a motorcycle movie? We haven't had one in a long time.
Are they really?
It's called The Bike Riders. You ever remember that? So it's about I believe a photographer from like the way back in the day in the Chicago area. So it's a little bit club related, but there was a kind of like how Hunter S. Thompson did what he did with the Hells Angels and stuff like that. And there's mainstream actors in it. There's A-listers in it, so it's going to be a legit movie. Okay. And so hopefully,
is this a Jason Momoa thing, or who's in it? Do you know?
No, this isn't it. This has got
that seems like right up his alley, though.
I believe this has like Tom Hardy, Austin Butler kid that played Elvis.
Really? Okay.
I want to say Norman Reedus is in it.
Oh, well, that makes sense too. I know.
So it's kind of cool to see some actual guys that are in the motorcycles.
I know Hardy's a big motorcycle guy too.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that when you have these things in media, it really does kind of help put younger eyes on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, the racing thing is super healthy too, because it's super true to, to the sort of like healthy, all-American, clean part of motorcycling, right? Yeah. Where maybe some of the motorcycle gang portrayals in the past gave motorcycles a bit of a bad name with, as in terms of a household name, but yeah, it's all, I mean, look, I love motorcycles, so.
Yeah. When on that same note, you think about how like kind of the average guy on the couch that has nothing to do with motorcycles, but it's going to give you those eyes. They want to see the drama in the world. They want to hear all that, like what's fucked up, going on. But then you got movies like the World's Fastest Indian. It was a fucking great movie. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And of course, no one thinks about that because they're thinking about like what's the one Brian Bosworth back in the day?
Oh yeah, or Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man.
Yeah.
And then even Easy Rider. All those years ago.
So I don't know. I think that it's coming around, and man, there's just something. It felt like when the pandemic happened, a lot of people got to go. I mean, I got to ride New York City during the pandemic.
Nice. No traffic,
and it was the most amazing experience. I don't think I'll ever get to have it.
Ride on the sidewalks and shit?
I didn't have to. I just went down the street. I'm down.
Who'd you do that with?
Well, we were heading out to Indian Larry's block party.
Yeah, okay. So Bobby, did you go ride with Bobby, or you just did your own thing?
I went with a buddy of mine. His name's actually Steve Chamberlain. He races in the BRL series. But this is kind of before that. I had met him in Michigan. I went to Milwaukee. I had him put one of those new 131s in my bagger. I took the ferry across to Muskegon from Milwaukee, met up with Steve, and then I went to his house in Grand Rapids, and we went and did a podcast with Burt Baker the next day.
Oh yeah, okay.
Great podcast. Bert's a fucking character.
Yeah, he
which
is.
you know.
Yes.
And then we left his spot, and we just bombed it from central Michigan all the way to essentially the border of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And then the next day we just went into New York, and we were like, man, the traffic's like nothing. And he's like, first time I've ever been to New York in my life. He's like, well, hey, let's just go ride the streets. And we were just riding around, checking it out.
Unreal.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like I Am Legend.
Yeah,
dead there.
That
but
was a crazy time. Listen, those first 3 months when they closed everything down. Yeah, I was driving and riding in LA, and there were times where I was on the freeway and I couldn't see a car in front of me and a car behind me on the I-405, and it was
did not feel
crazy.
A little
it felt a little apocalyptic for sure. Yeah, but also heaven. I got used to it really quick.
I think we did the same thing in Dallas, man. We just kind of started like taking over the streets, and then it was cool because this is controversial, but at one point after other incidences, cops were like not doing anything. Not saying we were stealing, but we were just hauling ass on the highway and enjoying the fact that they weren't pulling anybody over.
Yeah, right.
So we just...
I got 2 tickets in the first 30 days of the pandemic, and I hadn't had a ticket in 10 years. So.
Oh, that sucks, man. Well, Gard, I really appreciate it, man. This is I'm glad this is a last minute thing. We had a phone call while I was driving down the 5, and we were able to put this together, and now I don't have to take up your day tomorrow. So, and I really appreciate it, man. It's really inspiring to hear from someone like you that's built something that we can all aspire to go with in our motorcycle careers and things like that.
That's nice of you to say.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and good luck on the rest of your journey.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
All right. Take care.
I really hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I had a great time meeting and talking with Gard, and I want to thank Jordan from Hot Bike Magazine for helping me set this up. And if you guys want to hear more and support this podcast, go check out our Patreon. There's a link down in the description. You can check out all the unreleased content we have and get yourself set up to possibly win a Simpson motorcycle helmet that we're going to be giving away every month. Also, we got a lot coming up, man. Born Free's coming up. We're trying to get the Softail done. If you haven't checked out our YouTube, we're doing a lot of stuff on there with our vlog. And I'm about to head up to Oklahoma to paint a few bikes. So we're going to be a little bit of radio silence for the next about week and a half, and then we're going to be coming at you guys pretty strong with a lot of episodes in the middle of June, wrapping up all the rest of the podcasts that I recorded while on my trip to the Pacific Northwest, California, Utah, Arizona, and all that good stuff. So you guys have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you soon on another podcast. Peace.